Bill G. Schuette. Bill is a candidate for the 95th District of the State House of Representatives. Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Diane. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, you bet. It's our pleasure. Joining us also this morning is Diane Bristol of CBM Services and Jeff Stoutenburg from Dow. Both of them are volunteers on our Business Advocacy Council, and they've been assisting with our candidate interviews. Without delay, let's go ahead and get right into it with Bill this morning. Bill, in 2 minutes or less, could you introduce yourself to our viewers, explain your platform qualifications, why you're running, in 2 minutes or less?
For sure. And again, I want to say thank you to the NBA, to you, Diane, for pulling this together. It's a great opportunity for candidates like myself to engage directly with your membership. And I'm a proud member of the NBA myself. I'm a local guy, born and raised here, K through 12 in Midland Public Schools. And I'm running for state representative because I want the community that I grew up in. I want the next decade of Mid-Michigan to be better than our last. For that to happen, we're going to need to send leaders to Lansing who will stand up and fight for your freedom, your family, and your future. So when I talk about that, when I'm talking about freedom, we need to get government out of your way to make it easier for businesses across Mid-Michigan to get to work. That means cutting our taxes to put more money back in the pocketbooks of Michiganders when Biden inflation has taken bigger chunks out. It means standing up for a family's seat at the table and their child's education. Nobody cares more about their parents than their parents. So let's make sure that they're always having a seat at the table. And I'm laser focused on Mid-Michigan's future. That means when we're driving down US 10, being able to see that beautiful Sanford Lake again, but also building flood reduction infrastructure. So that way we're not worried about our basements flooding in. As far as qualifications go, well, I'm earning this every single day. I've knocked on almost 8,500 doors with my team across Mid-Michigan. I've had meetings with job creators in every single corner of the 95th district. I'm doing the work and listening to you. And I'm prepared for this responsibility. I worked with Dow on their public policy team, so I'm familiar with state, local, international public policy issues that impact our local job creators and our hometown Fortune 500 company. And I served my country at home and overseas as an intelligence officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency. In that position, the first thing the Secretary of Defense read many mornings were intelligence briefings I prepared. And if I've briefed generals at home and overseas, I can stand up for Mid-Michigan and Lansing.
All right, well, thank you so much, Bill. Our first specific question comes from Diane Bristol, CBM Services. Diane?
Good morning, Bill. Thanks for being with us. What are the three most important issues facing the Midland community, and how would you address those issues?
Well, thank you, Diane, for that question. And I don't think there's a single problem that Mid-Michigan or our state is facing that won't be easier to solve if we're not growing. I want us to be figuring out how we dish out bigger slices of a bigger pie rather than fighting over a shrinking pool of resources. So the way that we grow economically, population-wise, is by empowering our local job creators and making this the best state in the country and the best region in the state to build your business, grow your family, and live your life. And that means we need to get, again, government out of the way of our job creators. Let's cut taxes, put money back in the pocketbooks of Michiganders, but let's also eliminate burdensome red tape and regulations that are hindering the job creators and our great potential here in the state. I also think it's so important that parents always have a seat at the table in their child's education. So that'd be a second priority for me. Again, nobody cares more about their kid and their education than their parent. So let's make sure they're always involved in the decision-making process for their child's education. And right here in the state of Michigan, or right here in Mid-Michigan, bringing back the lakes, building flood reduction infrastructure. We had that downpour, a couple days earlier this week. First thing I did was check my basement. We can't be worrying about that here in the state of Michigan and Mid-Michigan. Let's build flood reduction infrastructure.
All right. Hey. I felt the same way, but it rained the other day. Yeah. So what is coming?
I was okay this time. There's no water in the
Oh,
basement
good.
this time. So.
Good. Next question is from Jeff Stoutenburg with Dow.
Hey, Bill, good morning. Thanks for being here. It's good to see you again. The top issue we hear from our business members is the challenge they have in recruiting employees. What should government do to help with this challenge?
Well, that's a good question, Jeff, and I'd agree. It doesn't matter if I'm meeting with, I guess, snowmakers, which is in one corner of the 95th district, or Robinson Industries, which is at another corner. Lack of employees and worker shortage is the top issue that I've heard from them in my different meetings with employers. I think there's two sides of this equation. One is we need to have good education and a pipeline of well-trained employees to meet the needs of our local employers. A great example would be I was part of Leadership Midland, and when we did that tour, we visited the Greater Michigan Construction Training Academy right here in Midland. That provides a great opportunity and a pipeline for students in the skilled trades to get the abilities that they need to then go and work in our construction industry. And we have a wonderful home building trades course here in Midland Public Schools, Bullitt Creek Public Schools, and our auto tech courses. Let's expand those types of opportunities in the skilled trades to meet that need. But also it comes back to population growth. When we have a greater pool of talent that we're recruiting, retaining, and developing right here in mid-Michigan, let's grow our population. That'll help make sure we've got a well-trained group of employees to work at our job with our job graders.
All right, thank you, Bill. Diane, you have the next question for Bill.
I do. Bill, can you provide examples of what you would do to help local businesses succeed and drive economic growth?
Yeah, Diane, that's a very important question. And, first, I think we need to cut our state income tax. When I'm knocking on all these doors, one of the top concerns I hear from folks is the rising cost of living. And that's when that's the case, we need to cut the income tax, give every single person living in mid-Michigan a pay raise, and help bring down the burdensome cost of inputs that many of our local businesses are facing. We already talked about the skills shortage and job shortage here in mid-Michigan. Let's make sure we're providing the adequate education in the skilled trades to address that issue. I also hear from meeting with your MBA members is that energy costs are a really big hurdle for a lot of our small businesses. So let's look to build line 5, which would make sure we're having the lowest possible energy costs in the state of Michigan, which also creates thousands of jobs. Let's look to nuclear power as a possible energy solution, and let's eliminate the personal property tax on new utility investment. We need to look at every single possible way to bring down energy costs for our businesses in mid-Michigan, and let's build local infrastructure, whether that's broadband, dams, roads, and bridges. Those are investments that we need to make in our state and in mid-Michigan.
All right, well, Jeff, that's a great segue into our next question from Jeff.
Yeah, Bill, if you're fortunate enough to be elected in November, what will your approach be to managing the state budget? And in addition to that, what's your general philosophy on spending and taxes?
Well, I think that the best budgets, Jeff, are ones that look to spend your taxpayer dollars wisely, but also look with the money that we do spend, provide the highest possible return on investment to the taxpayers and the people of the state of Michigan. It's kind of like that J.G. Wentworth ad. It's your money. You want it now. So let's look at the best ways to make sure our budgets have the best bang for the buck. If you look at our current budget, for example, Jeff, we've got a record $7 billion with a B surplus. And I think now that means we have the opportunity to make some very important investments in our critical infrastructure. I talked about earlier the need for rebuilding our dams, bringing back the lakes, building flood reduction infrastructure. Let's also look at critical investments in our roads and our bridges. This is a time where we can, again, provide a very high return on investments with our budget. But also, it's your money, so let's look at ways to provide tax relief, especially when these soaring, record 40-year inflation is taking bigger and bigger chunks out of pocketbooks of Michiganders. Let's cut our income taxes. Let's expand the earned income tax credit. These are fundamental ways we can help people struggling right now in mid-Michigan.
All right. Well, again, perfect segue into the next question. We can't talk about money without talking about inflation. So Diane Bristol.
Yeah, that's for sure. Inflation is hitting individuals and businesses hard. What should government do to help abate the situation?
Yeah, it's certainly the top issue that I hear about when I'm going door to door. It's the price of gas, it's the price of groceries. It doesn't matter if it's a gallon of milk, a gallon of gas. Prices are going up, and it's hurting people across mid-Michigan. And despite warning from economists on both sides of the aisle in Washington, they spent recklessly, and we're living with the consequences right now in mid-Michigan. So that's why when I go to Lansing, I want to make sure we're looking at ways to cut your taxes on the state level to provide more money in your wallets. Right now, when inflation really kind of functions like a tax, Diane, when everything's going up, you're seeing less of your money, getting you what you used to get. So when that's the case, let's look to find and provide tax relief to those living in mid-Michigan, put more of their money back in their wallets. I talked about cutting the state income tax. That's one option. But inflation as a tax really hits those who can least afford it the hardest. So let's also look to expand the earned income tax credit. I think that's a good option and a way to provide economic and financial relief to the working class and those who are being hit hardest by these price hikes, and eliminating the personal property tax on new utility investment that can help deal with some of the soaring energy costs that we're facing as well.
All right. Thanks, Bill. I think we have just enough time for one more question from Jeff.
Yeah, Bill, we've covered a lot of ground here, which is great. Are there any issues that you're specifically interested in that we haven't covered in our discussion so far?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And one thing that I didn't get to probably spend as much time talking about in our rapid fire here is the need for broadband. And in the 21st century, that's an essential utility. And I'm really grateful for the work that the Midland Business Alliance has been doing on making sure that we have adequate access to broadband throughout Midland County. And that's something I want to partner with and work on, that making sure that we're all on the same sheet of music, and we're working to make sure that you're going to have access to what is this needed utility throughout mid-Michigan. Let's empower our private sector, our providers, provide the connections that we need so that everyone, we're not having to go to McDonald's parking lots to, do our Zoom calls or finish our homework for our students in school. So that's an important issue that I'm looking forward to working with the great work that's already getting done.
All right. And our interview right here is a great example of how we rely on broadband. We've got to have it.
Absolutely.
In the modern world, for students, for business, for health, everything. We just need to have it. So thank you so much, Bill. We are at the conclusion of our interview. Thank you to Diane Bristol and Jeff Stoutenburg for joining me this morning. And Bill, it's been a pleasure sharing some time with you. So we appreciate that, and we'll see you again. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Diane.
Right now, joining us is Matt Dawson. Matt is a candidate for the 95th district in the State House of Representatives. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Good morning, Diane. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you. Also joining us, Diane Bristol from CBM Services. And we're going to get right into it this morning. So if you're ready to go, Matt, here we go. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, Matt, to introduce yourself to our viewers, talk about your qualifications, why you're running for office, and just generally your platform. So you've got 2 minutes.
All right, well, thank you. So a little bit about me, lifelong Midland County resident. I spent half of my life living in Sanford, the other half living in the city, which is where I currently live with my wife. I went to Midland Public Schools, graduated from Midland High in 2008, and then attended Saginaw Valley State, where I got a degree, a bachelor's degree. Then I got a job as a business consultant with Deloitte, which I did for about 4 years until the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, I shifted gears and am now working in the cannabis industry, which is an industry that I think has a lot of potential for Michigan as a whole and for the region as well. A little bit more about me. I come from a working class background. My mom was a nurse. My dad was in the restaurant industry at multiple levels as a restaurant manager. He helped open up and run some restaurants in the area, including soon to be Shire's Pasties. He helped them get off the ground. And also with Midland Brewing Company under the previous ownership. So I have ties to local businesses, and I have ties to working class in general. It's something that's a big platform for me, and something that I'm very passionate about is making sure that we're advocating for and pushing for smaller, independent, locally owned and connected businesses, which is a big concern of mine and a big issue of mine. Little bit more about me just to wrap it up. I was an independent until this year. I switched my registration to Democrat to run for this office. And I believe that we need to be focused on the candidates and the people that we are electing and less on the political parties that they are affiliated with. So I'll wrap it up there because I know we'll have plenty of questions and other things to get into.
All right. Thank you, Matt. We do have a series of specific questions for you, and Diane Bristol has our first question.
Awesome.
Good morning, Matt. Welcome. Glad you're here with us. What are the three most important issues facing the Midland community today, and how would you suggest those issues be addressed?
So I think they're in three different areas, right? I think the most pressing thing that we are understandably focused on right now is our flood infrastructure and reduction. I've been a fan of what we've been seeing get done with the Four Lakes Committee, and I know that the Midland Business Alliance has been a part of that, so I thank them for their efforts in that. I'm very happy to see how everyone has banded together and worked together on that, and I think it's important that we keep pushing for collaboration and joint efforts across both sides to get things done there. Another thing that I think people are very worried about right now is individual rights, whether that's reproductive freedom, access to birth control, making sure that we're protecting same-sex marriages and relationships. That's something that affects a lot of people in this community, whether we want to acknowledge it or realize it or not. So I believe it's something that we need to make sure we are protecting and making sure that everyone feels safe and welcome in our community. Final issue that I want to really focus on is, our top employer as of 2021 was My Michigan. I want to make sure that everyone in this community and everyone in the state of Michigan has access to affordable and preventative health care. I lost a parent in 2019 to an issue that I believe could have been prevented had they had the ability to go get themselves checked out earlier. So that's something that's very near and dear to my heart, and something that I think is affecting families all over this community.
All right. Well, thank you for that input, Matt. Next question. The top issue that we hear from business is the chronic challenge that they have in recruiting employees. Mm-hmm. What should government do to help with that challenge?
Specifically in terms of small businesses, because from what I've been witnessing, it's a lot of small businesses that are having some of the biggest issues with staffing. I believe that what we can do as elected officials is push for and fight for legislation that will help nurture those small businesses and help them not just recruit, but retain employees. I think a big issue we're seeing is that some small businesses can't keep up with some of the pay rate that's being offered by larger businesses because they have more money to operate with. So what I would like to see, for example, is maybe some initiatives where we could offer tax cuts for local businesses that are directly tied to being able to show that you are offering a higher wage so that you can be a more competitive business in general and acquire some of the talent that you're missing out on because they're going to other places.
All right, thank you for that. Diane Bristol, you have a question for Matt?
I do. Matt, what could you give us some examples of what you would do to help local businesses succeed and drive economic growth?
Certainly. local independent businesses accounted for nearly half of the economic impact in our country in 2019. A big part of that is that they have less in-house services such as clerical services, cleaning services, et cetera. So they end up working with other local businesses, banding together and helping to build more of a united community. So I want to nurture that. That's one of my main business focus. It means I want to talk to organizations like yours and others to help discover just how a representative can help build that nurturing environment. I just mentioned the tax breaks for small businesses. Another thing, I would like to review all steps and fees needed to open a business in our community, identify barriers to entry and redundancies that could be eliminated to help, or possibly look into staffing offices where we can make sure that we're helping new entrepreneurs walk through those steps, because it's not necessarily always a cost thing. It can be a complexity issue. So I would like to see that attacked, as well as offering more tax incentives.
All right, thank you. Well, Matt, managing the public purse strings is a key role for the state legislature. So could you explain, if elected, what would be your approach to the state budget? And what is your general philosophy on spending and taxation?
My general belief is that it is a necessity. However, it can be mitigated, right? I believe that we are probably seeing a large number of tax dollars that are being misused or put into places where they weren't supposed to be put into. I also think that we're seeing businesses, especially at the very high end businesses, that are employing people whose jobs it is to help identify tax loopholes so they can avoid paying certain taxes. That eventually gets passed down onto the working class. And whether, I know we're talking from a business angle, but if you're talking about local economic impact, that's less money that can be put into the local economy, because it's money the burden is being placed on the working class. So I would love to see a reduction in income tax, but I think to do that, we need to take a very deep look at where we're spending money and how we're spending money, and eliminate some of those redundancies. I believe that we're bloated and that we can fix that, but it's going to take, time and effort to actually sit down and go through tax code and go through the numbers and figure out what we can do.
All right. Well, that process would be made even more difficult with the factor of inflation right now. And
Right.
Diane Bristol has a question for you about inflation. Diane?
I sure do. Inflation is hitting individuals and businesses hard. What should government do to help abate inflation?
I think that, a couple things that I want to start with. The prerequisite that I believe inflation is a necessary, or not a necessary, but is an unavoidable thing that we run into. I also believe that some of this high inflation we're seeing right now is a direct result of the fact that the economy was completely grinded to a halt during the pandemic. So I think that some of it over time will naturally work itself out. That said, there's still things that the government can do to mitigate that. We're seeing some of it with raising interest rates, but that's not going to take care of everything. I believe that we need to make sure that money is getting into the hands of the working class, because those are the people that are going to be putting money back into the economy. I believe that we need to be supporting and making sure that we don't lose any more small businesses than we lose. I believe it was 200,000 additional small businesses were closed during the pandemic than what we normally lose. I think those are the kinds of things that you see lead to larger issues like inflation. So it's not as simple as having one quick fix, but I think if we are dedicated to attacking multiple symptoms and get to the root of the cause of this disease, we can actually do something to fix it. So I would start with that. I would start with sitting down, working across party lines, and figuring out just what we can do in multiple prongs, multiple facets, not just lowering a tax, not just putting more taxes. That's not the be all end all, just, raising and lowering a lever. We need to actually look at the symptoms that are causing the staffing issues, taxing issues, misuse of tax dollars, redundancies, redundancies and getting started with businesses. These are the things we need to be addressing. And, hopefully we can see that inflation start to come down and mitigate that, and learn from our mistakes, and hopefully prevent it from happening in the future.
All right. Thank you, Matt. We are to the end of our specific questions for you. But now you have 2 minutes to share with our viewers anything else that you would like to add or you'd like them to know about you.
Certainly. Honestly, I'm a big believer in listening and working together, which maybe it sounds idealistic or naive, or maybe it just sounds like a weird thing to hear somebody say. But I think that speaking with groups like the Midland Business Alliance, yesterday I had a sit down meeting with the MEA, the educators, to hear from the people that are actually dealing with these issues firsthand to see how they can best be represented. Listening is the key. No one person is an expert at everything. We're lucky if we're an expert at one thing. So I think it's important to listen to the people who have dedicated their lives to something and lean on them to help educate you and help spark conversation and ideas. I worked as a business consultant for 4 years. I understand some of the issues facing businesses, but despite that, I still have not been in the business world as long as the people of the MBA. So I think for you to truly be a representative of the people, you need to be actually able to speak with the people, lean on them, learn from them, take that advice and see where you can best serve them. It's not going to be the same all across the country. It's not going to be the same all across the state. And I want to be that person for this region. I want to be the person that actually is dedicated to representing and serving the people of this community, not simply the people that donated the most money to me or the people who I might have connections behind the scenes with. I want to bring representation back to the people of this region. And I believe that that can be beneficial, not just for the working class, but for the businesses as well. I think that a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that we need to, promote support and understanding and a community. And if we can do that, I believe that we'll all see ourselves better off. So I want to thank you all. Thank the Dianes for taking the time to talk to me this morning and have these questions. If anybody else wants to learn more about me or talk to me, you can go to my website, mattformi.com, reach out to me on Facebook. You can find me there, same name. I'm an open book. I'm pretty easy to contact. I'm the one running the show over here. So anything that you send to me, I will be the one reading it and responding to it. So I look forward to answering any questions you have, and feel free to send me any issues or any ideas anybody might have. I appreciate the time again, and I hope you have a good rest of your weekend.
All right. Well, you too, Matt, and we appreciate spending 20 minutes with you this morning and getting to know you and what your platform is all about. So we're going to let you get on with your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.